Hey Instagram, we are super excited to see you today for our weekly Q&A. We're going to be hanging out answering your questions today. There we go. We're recording this for YouTube as well if you're jumping onto the replay. Hello, and if you are joining me live, we are going to get your questions answered today. We're talking all about retellings today. Fairy tale, nursery rhyme, mythology, all the good stuff, legends and lore, all the fun things. You guys know I'm the queen of retellings. I got a million of them, and we're going to be talking about them today. We're joined by my friend J.M. Sullivan. She is also a retellings author, and we're going to be talking with her about how she creates her retellings, how I create my retellings. We're going to be having a chat about researching and avoiding copyright infringement and all those fun, fabulous things. So we are going to hang and get your questions answered. And if you're joining us, you can ask your questions live as we wait for the connection to pop up. JM, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. I cannot see you, but I can hear you.
Weird.
I can see you on my extra phone. Well, that's okay. Both places, all good. So I'm really excited. We haven't hung out in a bit. How are you?
Good. Busy. We haven't hung out in a bit. Things have been just wild. I mean, it's 2020, right?
It is 2020 and busy. I am super excited because today we're talking about one of my favorite topics. We're talking about retellings. I know it's one of your favorites too. So before we jump in and we start talking about how to do the research and how to make sure we're avoiding copyright infringement and how to put good twist on it, let's just kind of go over the retellings that are written. So which retellings have you tackled? Oh dear, and I think I lost the connection. That is not good. JM, why don't you go ahead and try that one more time? And while we're doing that, I'll go over the ones that I have done. Is a Q&A, and you will be able to ask your questions. Hello! Oh, now I can see you.
Hi. It just kicked me off, and I'm not really sure why, but it's actually saying request to join, so I'm going to hit this button at the
Don't,
risk of
don't hit anything.
blowing
You're
up
good.
the
See
program. Okay.
Okay. Guys, we will be taking your questions. Go ahead and drop those. Before we jump in, though, we do want to let you know a little bit about the retellings we've created. So, JM, what retellings have you tackled?
Yeah. So I have done a couple. My full-length novels are retellings of Alice in Wonderland and Peter Pan, respectively. And then I have a couple of short stories that are origins for villains, actually. And one of them is for the Little Mermaid, Ursula, and Snow White's Queen.
I absolutely love it. I am such a big fan of retellings, and I love the spins that you come up with for those. We're going to talk a little bit about those as we continue on, because I want to learn a little bit more about some of those fun twists that you came up with. So when we talk about twists, we're going to get to those. For me, I have covered everything from Goldilocks, Cinderella. I'm actually looking at my covers right now. So it's Goldilocks, Hansel and Gretel's Witch, The Little Mermaid, Red Riding Hood, Mulan, Aladdin, Sleeping Beauty, Little Bo Peep and Little Miss Muffet, Cinderella, Goose Girl, and I think I got all of them. So I've got a bunch of them there. There's lots of options with me. But if you've got questions, now's a great time to drop those in. We're excited that all of you are joining. And I want to take a look before we do anything else at how we do our research for our retellings, because once you pick a retelling, there's a little bit of work you have to do. You kind of have to know those original stories and know the different iterations of it, and then make sure you're not hitting any copyright issues with that. So for you, what does that process look like, Jan?
Well, I always like to start with the original work. And generally I get the inspiration or the idea and then my twist. And so for me, it's all about the twist. And if I can't think of like the perfect twist or something that's going to be like genuinely like, oh, that's really unique, I don't generally want to tackle it, just because there's so many amazing retellings out there, and also the originals are generally amazing. So if it's not broke, well, I mean, but so once I found my twist, and then I go into my research mode. And for that, I basically find lots of different versions. So I obviously start with like the literature version, the book. So I generally buy a copy and I designate it as my this is going to get destroyed copy, and I don't let anybody else see it because I generally like to treat my books very well, but my study copy gets written up in, it gets marked up in, and I take all these notes, and as I'm going through, I'm like, oh, this is a really great line. I take notes of like characters, just kind of interesting points that I want to incorporate, or things that I'm like, oh, this would work really well with my twist. And so I do that, and then I also, any sort of pop culture, movie versions, remakes, anything like that. I try to stay away from other authors' retellings because I don't want those to impact my work at all. But any sort of like source material I can find, I'm all about that. And then once I kind of have my notes, I outline and I get my kind of starting and ending point. I'm definitely a planter. I'm not one of those people that has a huge outline, but I also can't go into it blind. So I kind of have a beginning, middle, end, and this point's important, this point's important, this point's important, and as long as those kind of all connect, I'm good. And then I just go from there.
I'm very similar in how I write. I know kind of like my big stepping stones, and I figure out the little things as I go. For me, with my research, I always go to the original first. So I always make sure that I'm like checking in on who created it, when it was created, what those like main stepping stones for that was, so that I can work them into mine. And I actually, back in college, I was an elementary education major. So we take a children's lit course where I had to study a bunch of the original Fairytale assignments on these things. So I could handle on a lot of them before. So like the people who wrote a lot of the main ones and like different versions of things from the different people. I feel like I have a very good handle on that from my conversations of that. And then I start looking for my twists as I'm doing that, and I do a little bit more research, which of course brings us of making sure that we avoid copyright. And this is something that's really big and kind of prevalent in history. Not everybody is careful about these different things. So let's be very clear here and just jump in on this one too. When you are this, you have to make sure you have the rights to do it. There are usually ones that oral traditions that are totally do whatever. Before those are available after a certain time, you actually have to make sure you have the rights to it. So you have to do your research, you have to study this first, and you have to make sure you're not using like Disney's version. So if you're writing a Little Mermaid retelling, you have a Sea Witch, but you don't have Ursula. If you are doing Sleeping Beauty retelling, you are using Sleeping Beauty, but maybe not necessarily Prince Philip, because that's Disney specific. So you do have to do a lot of research for that, and be very careful with how you twist it, because you could get sued for that. So for you, JM, is there anything you're specifically looking for to make sure you're good to use something?
I'm really big on using inspiration and character inspiration. And that's part of the reason my twist is super important, because I want to make sure that it's different enough from the original source material that they're like, oh, yeah, this is different. And so then it's mostly like just drawing on those characters as inspiration. So a lot of times I'll use like the names, but for example, in my Peter Pan story, Wendy Darling is a space captain for the Londonier Brigade. So she's not like this young girl, and she's not exactly the same. I mean, she has some characteristics, and they obviously share a name, so you can kind of see that point. But they're very clearly not the same person. So for me, it's about kind of crediting the original work, and I'm also very upfront, like, this is a Peter Pan retelling. Like, there's no doubt about it that it's not a Peter Pan retelling, and I always make sure that, like, I'm crediting the authors and saying, you know, I drew this inspiration. So I'm very upfront about it. But again, you know, you want to make sure that it's those works that are open, and I'm definitely not like, you know, I love Disney, but I am not about to mess with them. So you just, like you said, you have to be really careful.
Yeah, for sure. And you have to be careful as well if you are writing a retelling, that any publisher that you're working with has also been very good about their reputation working with retellings, because some of them are not. So you just have to be careful, do your research, make sure things are legal before you get into conversations about a contract on that. And I love that you can actually use some of these open source materials and put these really big twists on it. So let's actually take a minute and let's talk about some of these twists, because like you said, you just did Peter Pan in space. So let's talk about your twists.
Well, yeah, so I mean, it's all about like the twist is it's what can I when I think of a twist, it's how can I use these characters but put them in like a completely different setting that may be similar or kind of you can see parallelisms, but it's its own story. So, for example, with Second Star, which I have right here. Oh, it's so pretty. I knew that I wanted to do kind of when I had the idea. I was like, well, what if the kids, instead of them going off into like this like random world, because I was thinking about it, and like in the movie they never really say where Neverland is, and it kind of shows them in like this world, but it's like, well, is it an alternate dimension? Is it what is it? And I had this idea. It's like, well, what if it was in outer space? And then from there, I was like, oh, well, what if Wendy was like a space captain? And so then my idea started going from there, and I was like, well, why would she be going out there, and what would happen? And then it was kind of like, well, what if they went out to go rescue someone? And then from there it turned out to actually Captain Hook was trapped in the Neverland sector, and so now Wendy is going to rescue Captain Hook. So you can kind of see those things that are similar, but also now Wendy's rescuing Captain Hook, which is completely different. So my other twist, which is a little bit more on the dark side, which I'm okay with, it was Alice in Wonderland with zombies. I love horror movies. My husband and I love horror movies. We tend to watch them probably more than we should, but we love them. And so, as any zombie buff knows, the best way to get rid of those little undead buggers is to chop off their heads. And so then I was thinking, well, the Red Queen's iconic line, off with their heads. I was like, well, what if the Red Queen was a zombie hunter? And so from there, it kind of just took off. So.
Which I absolutely love. You're really great at like taking your characters from the originals and just dropping them into an entirely new setting, which I feel like is very, very big within the retellings world, because it really does give it that different spin. So I like that you kind of like take us into space, you take us into zombie world, all these fun, fabulous things. I love how you create those twists. For me, is very similar. I do like to take my characters and drop them into different worlds. So Goldilocks is a spy sent to destroy the bears, or Cinderella's an assassin sent to murder the prince at his engagement party, or Hansel and Gretel's witch was actually working with them to assassinate the Mad King and ends up taking the fall when it doesn't go well. So I love like being able to take them and putting them in different settings, even to the point of like Aladdin becoming a steampunk retelling and putting it in an entirely different setting. So we want to make sure we get into your questions. If you've got them on retellings, now is the time to drop them. And we are getting questions in now. They would like to know which of our books took the longest to write. Bam, which of your...
By far, the book that has taken me the longest was my sequel to Second Star, and that was Lost Boy. And I mean, this guy is pretty hefty. So it was definitely longer than my first book. But I've also found out that like I'm not very fast with sequels. Like Alice was super quick to write. Once I decided I was going to write this book, I had it. And I mean, I don't want to say super quick when I'm talking to you, because obviously your super quick and my super quick are worlds apart. But Alice was my quickest. And then Broken Glass took me a little bit longer, and Grey Queen took me a little bit longer. And then Second Star again was pretty quick, and then Lost Boy, I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to finish this book. I'm going to die with unfinished business, and I'm going to be a ghost, and it's going to be this book's fault. But I think it's because once you've got that first book, you've got the sequel, and there's a lot of things you want to make sure that you're consistent. You want to make sure, like, with the first book, it's just fun, and it's like, oh, I'm going to write this, and it's going to be great, and it might not be great, but it's going to be great, and it's going to be fine. And then with the second book, there's like pressure and expectations, and it's terrible.
This, but the second book, it's like people know what is supposed to be coming, and you have to live up to that. And it's just like a lot of connecting the dots. I feel this on a deep level. Oh gosh, if you're just jumping in, we're talking all about fairy tale retellings, mythology, nursery rhymes, lore, all those great things, and we're answering your questions. I did see somebody ask if we would ever work together on a book. So JM, not that we're working together, but are you a fan of co-authorships? Is that something you're looking into for the future on a project?
I am not opposed to it at all. I would definitely be willing to explore it more. I have a lot of my own projects that I'm not finished. But I mean, I love a good twist. So if we were to come up with something, I mean, I'm also really great at overextending myself. So,
Oh, oh gosh, so funny. Um, we do want to know, what is your favorite retelling?
my favorite retelling, hands down, is Ella Enchanted by Gail Carson Levine. It's literally my favorite book of all time. It's a middle grade book. I read it was actually the very first book my mom bought for me when like she let me pick out my own book. Like I was getting old enough so I could like get picked out my choice instead of her just being like, here, read this. And so I picked it out and I fell in love with it. And it wasn't until the very end that I even realized it was a retelling. And I think that was kind of like the big thing for me. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. It's Cinderella. And that to me was just so amazing that like she could create this whole entire world. And then I didn't realize until the very end with like the slipper shoe part that I was like, oh my gosh, and everything kind of clicked together. And it's just so good. And I've read that book probably like literally a dozen times, but it is so good. And then if I'm looking for like YA, I mean, anybody could read Ella Enchanted, really. It's amazing. But more recently, the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. She's who I want to be when I grow up, so.
Valid point. Valid. Oh goodness, I love it. And guys, if you're jumping in, go ahead and ask your questions now. We would love to get them answered. I feel like for me, I don't really know if I have a favorite retelling. There's so many good ones out there. I like so many of them. So I will say the most instrumental retelling for me in spurring my decision to do retellings was actually a picture book from when I was in elementary school. My very first introduction to this that I remember was reading the true story of the Big Bad Wolf, or the true story of the Three Little Pigs, something like that. And it told the story of how the Big Bad Wolf wasn't actually the villain. The little pigs were kind of these mean, nasty little people, and they bent the story to make it look like he was this villainous person, but really he was just like there to be nice. And I loved that twist on its head of that story, because we all know it's the big bad wolf huffing and puffing and blowing the house down, but actually it wasn't. And so when I jumped into the world of writing, I knew I wanted to tell a retelling. I knew that was very important to me. And my first was Goldilocks. And I totally turned that story on its head. And it was 100% because of what I learned from that picture book back in the day. So that was kind of my throwback to my original introduction to the world of fairy tale retelling. But let us know in the comments, which retellings do you love and are instrumental in informing you on how retellings actually work? I'm going to scroll down and jump into more questions. Somebody did want to know, do you have more retellings coming up? I know you can't tell us too many details, but are you working on something?
Yes, my super secret project actually, and I'm trying to keep it on the down low because I'm so excited about like this twist, and I just don't want it to get out because again, I want to enjoy writing it and I don't want the pressure, although I already have like so much pressure, but it's okay. But I'm about it. I'm hoping to have it finished soon. um, and then I have that's a completely different than Alice or Peter. So it's a new retelling, completely a new twist. It's gonna be awesome.
Is this the one I know about?
I think so. I may have told you. I tend to tell you secrets.
I know.
So you might know about this one. And then I do need to finish the third book in my trilogy, Lost Boy. Well, the Neverland Transmission. So we have Second Star, we have Lost Boy, which took an eternity to write. So I have my last book, which is going to be never bound. It's going to wrap all the things up. It's going to be a monster, but I'm going to do it. So that one, my super secret project. And then I also have some ideas for some contemporary ones, actually. So they're not super fantasy or dystopian. It's completely outside. But I have an idea for some contemporary ones that I'm pretty excited about. But again, when I have time.
Oh, it's so hard when we have all these books. It's a lot. For me, I've got a couple of them sitting here waiting to surprise drop. I've got a couple more I'm working on. So I do have quite a few retellings in the works and sitting here waiting for me to do something with them. And I've dropped some hints on some of them on some of my social media. So if you caught that, congratulations. You are you to know. But I'm keeping this very, very secret. And I am surprised releasing them. So you aren't going to know they're coming. I'm just going to show up on TikTok one day and be like, surprise, kids. We're getting love for your Alice in the comments below. They're excited to read the rest of them. Shout out all the love. If you've got questions, now is a great time to do this. They do want to know what made you decide to write fairy tale retelling. So what was your inspiration for that, Jam?
Really, it was just that I had that twist. I had always kind of known that I wanted to write a book, and I always loved reading, and it had always been kind of a goal of mine. And I'd started kind of some other projects, and I'd shelved them. But when I got the idea for Alice, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to write this book. And kind of like I said, it was really like literally my husband and I had watched a movie, and I went to bed and I was kind of thinking about, of course it was a zombie movie, and I think I had recently like read like a book or something, like an Alice book, and I was like, well, and then I was like, what about the the zombies, you kill them like with the murdering of the chopping off of the heads. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's like exactly what the Red Queen would say. Like, and so from there, that was kind of literally, it was so crazy because as soon as I had that moment, like I started thinking, okay, well, if the Red Queen is going to be a zombie hunter, then who's going to be the Cheshire Cat, and who's going to be Alice, and what's going to be this? And like I kind of, as I was coming up with these, I had the plot outlined, like, my style plot, beginning, middle, end, literally done within like 15 minutes. And I was like, okay, this is what's going to happen. And then the next morning I got up and I started writing, and there was a book.
I like, and I want you to weigh in on this, but I feel like when you decide on a twist for a story, so you know your twist and you know what retelling you're doing, it just comes really, really fast. Like, you know where you're going and what you're doing with it. Do you feel like that?
Yeah, yes. And that's why, for me, again, like that twist is so, so important, because I could sit here and be like, okay, I'm going to write a Cinderella retelling. But then I'm like, okay, but what am I going to do? And then I could sit there and I could think about it. I could think about it. I could think about it. I still probably wouldn't have anything come. But as soon as I'm like, oh, but if this is what happens, it's almost like it makes a place for everything to fall in. Because if you know, oh, this is going to be set in outer space. Well, if this is going to be set in outer space, then this person needs to have this job. Or if this, like, it's just whatever that twist is, it's so big and it impacts so much. Like, it helps kind of shape the entire story.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. When I first started writing my retellings, I had not started with a retelling. I had actually written two dystopians just for me. I wasn't planning on doing anything with them, but I knew I wanted to write a Goldilocks retelling, but I didn't know what it was. So I thought about it for weeks and weeks. I just kind of tried to figure out what that hook was. The second I got it, super easy to write. And I feel like that's true of all of the retellings I've created. As soon as I find that big hook and that placement for them, everything just falls into place. It just kind of plays out in front of me. So I just feel like that's kind of very accurate representation of how we write retellings. We've got more questions coming in. We're going to go ahead and get those answered for you. We're here hanging out for a couple of minutes. We've got about 15 minutes left to answer your questions. So go ahead and continue to send those in for us. And they do want to know, if you could be a character in your story, who would it be?
Oh, gosh. Well, I feel like I relate a lot to Wendy. So maybe Wendy. I like Alice and she's cool, but I don't want to mess with zombies. So Although Wendy deals with some stuff too, I'm not gonna lie. But I feel like being a super cool space captain, yes, please. Also, she's got super awesome friends like Johns and Michaels are pretty great. Not that Chess isn't fantastic too, but I really do like I feel like the cast in Second Star and in Never and Lost Boy, I would much rather hang out with. Alice has a lot to deal with, and not everybody's very nice.
I feel like if I were going to compare you to one of your characters, it would be Wendy. And I feel like that would be your friend group. And like, that's where I would cast you in the movie of your books.
Awesome.
I think for me, because I have so many, I don't like it's kind of hard for me to say, but I also can very clearly say I would love to be my Goldilocks because I'm a little bit in love with the love interest, and that's just where I'm gonna leave that.
Just a little bit.
Just a little obsessed. Fun. Let's see. I'm gonna scroll up because we're getting lots of questions now. And we did take a look at some of these. Do either of you have a certain playlist that you listen to while writing to keep you in your world? Jam?
You're gonna need to read that question again because you like glitched out, so I missed a really important word, I feel.
Do you have a playlist in which you listen to keep you in the world that you're writing in?
Playlist. That was the word. Yes, it was. Um, yeah, well, I do. And it kind of varies depending on the story that I'm writing and the type of story. So, for example, with Alice and the Wonderland Chronicles, it was definitely like a darker kind of like, I don't want to say grungy, but grungier kind of feel. I listened to a lot of Melanie Martinez. 21 Pilots played a lot. I really liked a lot of those things. I had some just kind of like darker, more edgy kind of work. And then when I was doing for Neverland Transmissions, it was a lot more like electronic, kind of like space agey, futuristic. I love Starset. Oh my gosh, Starset is amazing. And so played a lot of Starset. And then, but also like some techno vibes got in there. And so like the Fat Rat, I would play a lot of. Just some really just things that I thought, like, for whatever reason, kind of aligned with the setting. And that's kind of more, and I didn't have necessarily like songs or anything for independent scenes, but it was more as like a whole. And then for my super secret project, my playlist is amazing and I love it. And it may be the only reason I write some days, I'm not gonna lie.
Well, just right. That's so funny. For me, I don't typically listen to music as much when I'm writing. I like to focus in on what I'm writing, and I definitely get distracted, and I definitely sing along and sometimes type lyrics. So I typically try not to listen to music, but when I do, it's usually something along the lines of like Alan Walker, Lindsey Sterling's very good for instrumentals, like backgrounds on things.
Yeah.
Or it's like some like that I sing in white noise and not have to pay attention to. So nothing necessarily to keep me in the vibes, but I will say when I was writing my Little Miss Muffet hacker story, Along Came a Spider, Alan Walker was like the playlist of my life. That was very um who's your favorite Alice in Wonderland character type to base a character on?
Well, in my stories, my favorite character, and I know you're not supposed to have a favorite character because it's like having a favorite child or whatever. What I do, because apparently I'm a bad mom, I'm a bad book mom. And Chess is 100% my favorite character. And he's based off of the Cheshire Cat, and that was really fun because the big thing was he was able to kind of have his own personality, but what I took from him was he kind of disappears and comes in and out, and he's just kind of really a mysterious character. And if you read the book, you'll understand why. But that was a lot of fun because I got to kind of use those elements, and then I got to make him and give him kind of his own entire personality. And he's very snarky and very sarcastic, and I kind of love it.
I feel like that's very much your personality, though. You like the snark. You like bring the sass when we have conversations. I love it. Which actually leads us into another conversation here. Do you ever base your characters off of your personality?
I wouldn't say base them off of, but I definitely feel like my personality and bits of my personality kind of sneak into each of my characters. Chess can be very sarcastic. Alice has kind of like a dry sense of humor. Um, and so I just feel like if I was to like really sit down and look at it, I could probably be like, oh yeah, for like every character. And some of them probably have more influences of my personality than others do. Or sometimes I try and think of like an anti, like I'm like, oh, I want this person to be a jerk. What don't I like? um, so, and that's probably really bad, but it's been working so far, I guess. So
It's so funny. I love it. Oh, you guys are so funny. For me, I definitely have bits of my personality in a lot of my characters, not all of them. I have over 24 published books at this point. So my early works, I was like, how can I work a little bit of me into some of these characters, things I haven't seen from me and my life and my personality into them. Now that I've expanded my stuff, I'm like, I have nothing to do with this character. Let's keep writing. So no, depending on the book. If you're just jumping in, we're answering questions about fairy tale retellings. Go ahead and drop your questions down below. We'd love to get them answered. We got 10 minutes to hang out, 9 minutes. 9 minutes to hang out before we're wrapping up for today. And JM and I have known each other for a good long time, and they actually want to know when and how we met. So JM and I actually came up in the author world together. We published right around the same time. And we met through a fun little event. You want to tell them about it, Jam?
Yeah, if I remember right, because I'm not gonna lie, my memory is not always the best. But if I'm correct, it was the Serendipity
Yeah.
tea, correct?
Yep.
Okay, whew, look at me go. Um, and it was for new authors, and I believe it was put on by Abby J. Reed. And if you guys haven't checked her out, she's amazing, not just as an author, but as a human. Like, she's just the sweetest. So go give her some love and support her, and that's my shout out because love her face. And so she organized this kind of thing, and it was like this tour, and it was actually really fun. Like, we got to like make a tea based off of our books, which I thought was perfect because my book was Alice, which of course tea parties are kind of a big thing. And so we got to design like teas, and then we got to do like a whole blog tour, and then we gave all of our like teas and like fun little trinkets to a winner. It was a lot of fun. And then through that, I met some really amazing authors like Abby and, of course, KM. And from that point, she's just kind of been stuck with me.
We latched on to each other very quickly. I actually found the tea I created. I had created a couple different packets of it, and I kept one for myself just to like use in photos. And so I found it the other day, and I had it on my shelf behind me, but I think I moved it to my other shelf.
Oh.
For our books, and then we sent them out to contest winners. So it was super fun. And since then, Jam and I have done live streams. She's been on my talk show. She's hosted a bunch of events with me. We signed at New York Comic Con together. We totally bunked for that event together, and all the fun things. So we've definitely been here together for the entirety of our author careers because it was our debut babies back in the day.
Story.
Oh gosh. Big fans in our chat box today. Thank you guys so much for joining. Appreciate y'all being here. If we could meet a character from one of our stories, which one would that be? Who do you want to meet, Sam?
Oh. I don't know. I mean, I feel like with them, if I was the one that put them through some of the things that they experienced, they might not so much. So that could be tricky. Um, I guess I would like to meet Chess. I think he would be fun. I think like even through it all, he'd like have a good sense of humor. He'd probably have a few quick remarks to give me about some of the situations I put him through, but I think he'd take it pretty good naturedly. Maybe. Maybe.
Perhaps. That's so funny. I love it. For
The series I'm meeting him, is it after Alice or is it after Grey Queen? Because that could also have a pretty big impact on his feelings for me.
that is true. It is very dependent on where in the series we're meeting and interacting with these characters, because we just get more and more vicious as we go. I'm just saying, it's a thing. Oh gosh, no, I love it. I love it. I think of your characters, I would want to meet Wendy, and I would want to meet John's, because we know he's definitely a friend over here. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Oh, you'd have to behave yourself if you met John's.
Well, maybe I'll have to keep my dove bear next to me and I'll be okay.
Okay.
I'll just bring in my characters. They'll keep me in check. It's all good. Yeah, I would definitely meet my Illyria, my Goldilocks, and my baby bear, dove bear. But also outside of my retellings world, I would 100% want to meet Jade from the Jada duology. They're my babies. Oh, and Annika, my witch from Hansel and Gretel's retelling. That would be awesome. Oh, more questions coming in. Guys, we've got about 4 minutes before we wrap this up, but I do want to make sure we get questions answered. So I'm just checking in our boxes, making sure I hit the big important ones. Okay. I think we got most of the big ones. If you do have more questions on Fairytale retellings, go ahead and drop those in for us now. But before we go, I do want to talk real quick about our retellings. So, JM, where's a good place to start in your retellings? What do we need to know? Give us kind of like the highlight reel of your stories.
Well, I guess it kind of depends on what you're interested in, because my retellings are both really different genres. So if you are looking for like a darker, kind of twistier version, I would recommend Alice, because basically it's Alice in Wonderland with zombies. And this one also has some really great like thematic elements. It's all about like sisterly love, because Alice is trying to save her sister Dinah. And so that was a really big element. So this is good if you don't mind like zombies or being scared. I probably would recommend this one. One of my favorite kind of comments that I've ever gotten about my writing was from my editor for this particular book, and she's like, "You're so nice. How do you write this stuff?" So if that kind of gives you a taste of what you might expect here. If you are not into horror, which is totally fine, I know it's not for everyone. A lot of people really like Second Star. It's definitely got that twisty element to it, but it's more of a sci-fi, and it's set in space. This one also, if you are more romantically inclined, while I will never say, hey, choose me over KM if you're looking for a good story, because I blush writing kissing scenes. This one definitely has more of a romantic aspect to it with Wendy and Peter.
Why?
I don't like writing the romance scenes. I would much rather write somebody getting their face eaten off by a zombie than a kissing scene. Sorry.
I may have pushed her on that one a little bit. There was a conversation and I made her write more. You are welcome. You're welcome. And then of course you have your short stories as well.
Oh yeah, those are definitely like if you're in the mood for something like little to read, or if you're wondering like, hey, why do these bad guys get such a bad rap? One thing that I really do enjoy about my short stories is by the end, my whole goal is to make you feel bad for the villain. So if you're like, oh man, this villain's a jerk, maybe you want to know why or you want to sympathize with them, check out my short stories, because I may or may not have been called a terrible heartbreaker for those.
Yeah, you're kind of mean, and I love it. If you are interested in my books, I got billions of them. There's lots and lots of them. I actually have 4 free books out right now. 2 of which are retellings. I had to think about which ones were free. I've had the #7 best-selling book out of every book in existence on Amazon, which you can go check out, and all the fun things. Everything from Goldilocks as a spy, to Cinderella as an assassin, to Mulan as a dragon shifter with a love triangle, to hackers and cyber things and fantasy things and just like all the good things. So if you need a rec from me and from mine, feel free to DM me, tell me what you like, and I will tell you which one might be the best fit for you. But there's a bunch of them, a lot of offers out there, and you can grab some of them for free to try and see if you like my style of writing, so you can hang out and do all the fun things. JM, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, talking all about my favorite topic, retellings. I appreciate you being here and joining us, telling us all about your stories. Any last thoughts on retellings for our viewers?
Retellings. So if there's a retelling that I need to read, you should definitely tell me about it because they're amazing and they're my favorite. So please tell me about any good retellings you recommend. And I'm always, like I said, I have far too much to do with my life, but I'm always on the lookout for a good story to retell. So if you have any recommendations on retellings you'd be interested in or stories you'd be interested to hear twisted, let me know. You can find me and tell me those things on all the social media at JM Sullivan Books.
Fantastic. And I agree. If you have stories you would love to see written and twisted up, go ahead and let me know as well, because I will write them. JM will write them. Our friends will write them. We will give ideas to other people. So we want to know, where are you focusing on? Fairy tales, nursery rhymes, legends, lore, mythology, all those fun, fabulous folktale things. We want to hear from you. What do you want to see twisted? Because maybe we haven't heard of it. Maybe we don't know about it. Maybe if it's a lesser known story and we can bring it to life in a new way for you. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out. As always, you can hang out at KM Robinson Books for me, and you can hang out with JM on social media as well. We love hearing from you. We love getting your conversations. DM us when you're reading our books, all those fun, fabulous things. And we will see you in our next live stream here on Instagram next Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern every single week. And you can hit us up tomorrow on the YouTube page, because we are going live with a live book reading at 11 a.m. I had to think about the time. 11 a.m. Eastern at 3 p.m. Eastern for a live book cover design. And then on Friday, we'll be live on TikTok at 3 p.m. Eastern for our weekly Q&A. Thanks so much for hanging out. Appreciate each and every one of you being here. Until next time, I hope you all have a great day and stay inspired. Bye, friends. Happy reading.